Hey everybody, happy Thursday to you all. Hope you're doing well. Wanted to hop on here real quick and talk about something that's came to my mind more recently, and I've been really discovering is business relationships with personal relationships, and specifically through partnership. So I'm talking about situations where you partner with somebody, maybe as owners or as investors, with somebody that you have a pre-existing relationship with, family, friends, neighbors, maybe even other coworkers, and you endeavor into a business type of relationship. Maybe they loan you money, maybe they help you start a business together or finance, whatever the case may be. I just wanted to talk to you about something that I've just kind of had been reminded of lately, which is just the importance of the relationship, right? Whenever I talk to clients who have multiple business partners, whether they're related to them or not, one of the things that always comes about is the importance of conversations. Now, this conversation specifically isn't going to go after whether or not it's wise or unwise to have business partners. That I don't care about that conversation. There's plenty of resources for you to how to build a business with partnerships and strategizing and the mechanics behind it. What I really want to go after is the intentions behind it. How important is the relationship? How important is the person that you're speaking to? How are you willing to show up in that relationship regardless of the business realities that are before you? Because we can all know of stories where the worst damage in businesses generally are the relationships that were there and then they get destroyed, and now the collateral damage is distant family members, distant children, distant friendships, really burnt bridges, just character, ethics being questioned in the future. And my heart is to just invite you, as you guys are, I'm having a lot of conversations with people that are wanting to start businesses and invite other people that they love into the process, which is awesome. Great resources can be abounded whenever we partner together. The biggest thing I want to invite you to is the intentions behind the relationship. Where are you going to be called up? Because frankly, we all know that conflict is part of business. It's not because we're trying to pick fights. It's just the reality that hardships and difficulties are part of small business. And are we willing to stand in the place with the person that we love on the front end before we start making decisions together? Are we willing to actually go to them and say, hey, this is what I worry about, right? Because in most business books or most leadership books, they'll just tell you about, the D's of partnerships, talk about death, talk about destruction, talk about divorce, talk about, just horrible scenarios happening. Then what happens? And those are very good plans, but those are mechanics. Those aren't intentions. The intentions are where the heart is. Where are we going? Who am I committed to being in this conversation, right? Like, how important is this relationship to me? And frankly, if everything blows up, am I okay with what this relationship will look like when it's all said and done? Whether it's for, better or for worse, whether we are succeeding or not, like, what am I up to? Emily, thank you for the compliment on the hat. Shout out to Big Spring Farms. Woo woo. Buddy and Jill are doing awesome things. It's amazing to really stand with each other, and the best ways that we can actually stand with each other are actually having conversations. One of the things that I always ask people who are thinking about partnerships is how do you do in conflict? And if they're like, oh, I'm great in conflict, I'm confident, I'm good with it, and it's usually just them trying to show themselves like, I got it down. But really, it's not during the easy times where it's conflict's not easy. Whenever it's just a one thing, it's actually far more difficult, and it can be far more trying whenever it's so personal, which is why business is personal. And because business is personal, whenever business decisions are being made and personal relationships are being mixed, who am I going to stand for in that space and in that moment of time? Am I going to stand for the person, or am I going to stand for myself? Am I going to stand for us and the mission that we're going to? And I'm going to show up and have honest conversations where I provide honest feedback, and I listen to feedback, and I listen to criticism, and I listen to growth that needs to happen? Or am I just going to dig my feet into the ground? Because in the relationships in the businesses that I've seen fall apart, the worst damage is not the financial strains, and those are plenty bad and plenty sad. But the worst byproducts of a business partnership breaking off are the emotional strains. And it's primarily because nobody had an honest conversation on the front end of who we're committed to being and how important the relationship is, and then the willingness to do that day in and day out of the business. So they showed up in the boardroom meeting, they showed up in the day-to-day operation sales, they showed up in the feedback whenever things weren't going right. And whenever those moments were happening, nobody spoke up. Nobody was willing to stand for the other person. So, I would love to hear from you all. Like, what's the best advice that you've heard about business partner relationships? Like I said, whenever you think of creating a business partnership, what is the best advice that you've heard or you would provide for somebody as they endeavor in a partnership with somebody else, especially somebody that they know, somebody that they already have a pre-existing relationship with, not like an investor that they don't really speak to or report to, but somebody who's really partnering with them in the day-to-day. What advice would you provide for them? Mine is to hold space for getting clear on the intentions of the relationship first, because then the business stuff will happen. That's X's and O's, that's strategies, that's attorneys and accountants, and that's great and important. But really, who am I committed to being? What's my vision of who I believe myself to be for not just me, but also for the relationship that I'm inviting into this endeavor? Because if I know who I'm committed to being in this relationship, then I know what I'm going to say, how I'm going to say it, what I want to go to, where we want to go to. And because it's honestly, friends, I was just reminded of it the other day. And I'm so grateful that this person was able to speak the importance of our relationship as we talked about the idea of partnership, because it just reminded me, oh man, business decisions are, especially whenever involving personal relationships, are so much more than the business. It is the relationship. And if life is all about relationships, we need to talk about the relationship. How comfortable am I borrowing money from, mom and dad or grandma and grandpa? Because we need to have the conversations of what happens if we can't pay it back or something bad goes wrong. And that's where those business leaders are talking about the right things about, what happens if somebody dies or somebody gets sick or somebody goes bankrupt or somebody gets divorced or something changes in our circumstances. Having some plans for that is wise, but knowing who I'm called up to be. Hey, you lent me this money. I promise you will get it back, and you will get it back with this interest rate. And my commitment is to show up and always pay you back, because that is the agreement that we had before us. And there's nothing that's going to get in the way of that. So my intention is to be a man of integrity. Boom, go for it. And the moment that somebody sniffs out that I'm not being a man of integrity, they have full access to question me and ask me and dig into what's going on. And I get to come to the table with honesty and vulnerability whenever I don't do that and don't live into that. That's what I'm talking about whenever I'm inviting you guys into is, what are our intentions in the partnership, especially the partnership that is found on the relationship that's already there. And if we want to go somewhere with somebody that we love, are we willing to make sure that we're going to come to the table with complete honesty, complete vulnerability, so that we can be a gift to each other and reach the goals that we want to see come true? A successful business, a great life, more freedom and time, whatever the case may be. None of that's going to be possible if we don't stand for each other or stand for ourselves. And if we don't do that on the front end, I promise you, playing catch up in the middle of the business is going to be a lot more work. So my friends, if you're thinking about doing partnerships, and if you're considering inviting people that you love into business relationships, whether they be big or small projects, it doesn't really matter. Know the intentions, know where your heart is, know who you're called to be, and invite the other person to get clear on who they're called to be in that. Not who does what. The X's and O's aren't as important as who am I going to believe myself to be, who am I going to live into my future to be, and how are we going to do that for each other and making this a good working relationship. So just wanted to invite you all into that conversation. Share with me whatever thoughts you have on business partnerships, particularly with relationships. Would love to hear what advice you would share to somebody who's considering inviting family, friends, coworkers into partnership in their business. And feel free to give me a shout out and let me know. But I hope you're doing well, having a great day. And thanks again for joining me. Take care, guys. See ya.